For those who don't know who you are, who just clicked on this video wondering who the heck you are, we've got the title, we've got the thumbnail, but let's go a bit deeper. Who is Archer Newton? What's your story?
Yep. So I'm Archer. I'm an entrepreneur, speaker, and a learning and productivity coach. So I grew up all of my life basically in Adelaide. And when I was 14, I taught myself how to code, watching YouTube videos, playing. Basically, I started my first business running a Minecraft server, if you're familiar with that sort of industry. And then what happened is by the time I was 14, my dad was admitted into ICU for 2 years. And he was supposed to have not made it through. And so for me at that sort of age, I realized that materially, my future life and my mum's life was going to change. I needed to find a way for us to be okay financially by the time that I was 21. Luckily, he made it through. Then I hit 16. Same thing happened. 2 months in ICU, should have passed. So I was now on this journey of basically locking in because I had to. And it was just about basically survival for me, but also making sure that I knew that at a certain point, my dad would pass. And I needed to make the most of that without putting my life on hold. So this is the point in time when I started learning about how to be more productive, make more use of my time, and then also how to study more effectively because I need a job and hopefully a good job. That was 16. Then by 18, I graduated high school, top of my year, and also with the highest possible academic ranking in Australia. I then got accepted into 3 medical schools, so I started that journey. By 19, I scaled a tutoring company to multiple 6 figures. By 20, I started working with Ali Abdaal, who's one of the world's most followed productivity experts. By 21, I had now basically achieved everything that I had locked myself in on for the last 5-6 years. Mum and I were okay. This is also the year that my dad passed. When I turned 22, I took a gap year from medical school. I needed that time to just kind of reset, given everything that just had happened. But this was also the year that I basically went all in. I traveled to the US, I went to India, I started speaking on some of these strategies that helped me be able to have that time with my dad through becoming more effective at my learning and then also with productivity. This is also the year that I now took on the role as COO at iCanStudy, which is a global training organization that teaches people the systems and the strategies on how to learn anything faster. So we're basically teaching the evidence-based methods to learn new knowledge and skills in half the time. At 23, I presented a TED Talk on some of these learnings at Oxford University, and now at 24, I've officially dropped out of medical school. So now I'm all in on iCanStudy and growing that just because for my journey, learning to learn and becoming more productive made me be able to say goodbye to my dad without regret. I was able to actually do all of the study, do well, get into medical school, and at the same time have that time to be there when I knew this was a very finite amount of time left. So when I talk about learning and productivity, it has been the biggest unlock for me in being able to achieve what I want in life. And I remember when I had turned 21, I took a step back and I was really shocked because I was just I had just had these I guess visors on my eyes to just survive. And then now I had come out the other end of it. And so really what I think about now, especially through the content I create, is how can I share a lot of this knowledge that I had to learn in that sort of period because it did so much for me. And I know that it does so much for people inside of basically our program. And then also what I see in terms of the impact that I can have through content as well. So that is essentially where we're at right now and going all in.
Would you say that it was that sort of intrinsic motivator to really carry through the legacy and be the best version of yourself in tribute to your dad?
I would definitely say it was a big part of it. Of course, now I think about, well, what will my dad be proud of in seeing what I do? And I know he definitely wouldn't have understood the path that I've now taken, basically leaving medicine, which is a safe and traditional path for something that's much more risky. But he knows that this is something important to me. And ultimately, he was a business person as well. And so a big part of it is obviously doing it for my mum and dad who did so much for me, for sure. I think a big part of it as well during that for my story was, again, that it was that survival. If I didn't do that in that period of time, then things would have been very different for us. We would be having a very different change in terms of lifestyle, and something far, far, far more challenging in my opinion. So I basically thought about like, well, I've got the opportunity now with yes, dad is in this very, I guess, unstable period of health, but everything else is still okay. I've got the opportunities with school. I've got time. Mum's helping out. This is the time that I've got now, and I don't know what the future is going to look like. So that's why I had to kind of lock in. Yeah.
It was almost like there was this upwards pressure that was pushing you towards this is like a now or never moment. And I think for sure you've reaped that as you've gone through. I know you mentioned that you actually left medical school. Was it this year?
Yeah.
Dude, you did not tell me until like now. So I was like,
yeah,
oh,
just before
damn,
this podcast,
okay.
I was like,
That's
oh, by the way,
insane.
we have to change this. Like, I've actually left now. So yeah, it's been like 3 years that I've been taking a gap year while pursuing iCanStudy, but also just trying to come to that very difficult decision of obviously leaving the traditional safe path.
There are a lot of people who go through that type of contention, and I think you're probably the extreme condition where it's like you've gotten to both avenues that people want, you know, like you've gotten into the absolute peak of like say med school, for example, and now you've gone through the entrepreneurship route as well. How did you come up with breaking that point of contention?
I think when I speak on this, I'm speaking for myself. I know a lot of people, especially being in that sort of space where there's a lot of people who are doing medicine and doing something else, and they're having to decide between picking one or the other. I do want to caveat that I did actually really like enjoy medicine. What happened for me is that effectively a once in a lifetime opportunity had come up, which is basically Google was knocking on our door saying that they wanted to partner with us. So we were at a conference, we met them, we told about our product. It was a one of a kind. They've heard nothing like this, and they see the potential in it. So they were coming on to kind of help us with our AI product development. And at the time, I was flying in from Adelaide to Melbourne every few months, still while in med school. And it was just kind of that point where it's like, okay, there's really something here. Medicine is something that I can return to in the next 3 years of taking the gap year, but also at the same time, I can re-enter. And it's going to be challenging, it's going to be difficult, but like if it's something that really makes sense to me, it is a reversible decision. Whereas Google being there, I don't know if that's as much of a that will come again sort of situation. So it became a kind of became a little bit more clear in that way. But I definitely do have to say that I spent almost a year trying to make that decision. I was like, I often don't feel that much stress because, again, like I'm quite good at self-compartmentalizing. There's a whole thing about that. That's not necessarily a good way of dealing with it. But I remember just for that final year when dad was basically just deteriorating his health was deteriorating and he was going to pass. At the same time was when I was really just like in my head about like, do I do it? Do I not do it? Do I take the gap year or not? I remember that I had fights with my mum about it often, and she just wouldn't understand why would I be leaving something when it's only 3 years left to make it through. And I've obviously done like 8+ years of like school and all of that to get there. But ultimately, I went ahead, made that decision, and it wasn't easy. I spoke to many mentors, and I am extremely proud of myself for making that decision. And so far, it's been going really good. But like definitely, those 2 years afterwards has been those were really tough years. I remember the specific moment when I told my mum that I was taking a gap year. She cried. She was very upset by it. And again, all those fights that we were kind of having, I didn't expect that she was going to like it at all. But I knew within me, I just had to do it. Like I couldn't live really with the feeling as much anymore. When I told her, I was fully expecting her to like completely reject the idea, and I was just gonna have to do it without her approval. And of course, like we always want our parents' approval in one way or another to have that support. But I remember that when we had that conversation, I told her, and instead of her like coming back at me and saying no, she cried. And then she actually like told me that she was in full support of what I did. She said to me, Archer, I don't understand what is this online computer laptop-y thing that you're
Yeah.
doing. I can't see it. I don't understand it. I don't like this idea, but I will support you, even though I don't understand what it is. And that really stuck with me because she's taking a leap of faith in me as well. And of course, that's like probably the best thing that I could have got out of that situation entirely. And also, what she said afterwards was again, not what I was expecting. She basically said that like, she doesn't understand it, but she can support it because she had to do the same thing in her life. So my mom's from the Philippines, and my dad met her in the Philippines when they were getting to know each other. And for her family was in full disapproval of her coming with some random person that she's met in the Philippines. But she did it anyway. And she knew the risk associated with it. She didn't fully understand what could happen, but she knew that that was a decision that she had been pushed to and had to make for herself. And so it was basically the mum was acknowledging that was the same situation for me. And she was in full support of it. She took many years to actually understand what it is I do. I don't think she can still explain what I do, but I walked away with that, with her support, and then I just went ahead and did it. Yeah.
It's almost like you're going into the idea of 1- and 2-way doors, where dropping out, like, yes, you could technically revert back into it. Yes, it's hard, but you technically could. And it's that one-time decision where, you know, you're looking into taking the biggest risk of your life, something that nobody really understands. Like, say, for example, your mum doesn't necessarily understand it, but then despite that, she still supports you fully because she trusts that she raised you in a way where you can take the right decisions for yourself and living something not necessarily through what they want, but also something that you can see yourself going through. So it's always such a heartfelt moment seeing your parents sort of bet on you. And yeah, I'm grateful to have the same thing for my parents. Like, they don't really understand what I do, but yeah, it's just like, even this taking them into this space is just like, wow, it's take snap photos everywhere, and it's like you can see like those small hints of the fact that like they're proud of how far you've come. And yeah, it's always heartwarming seeing that. Yeah,
I think visuals do so much for my mum as well. Like, in the same way I'm imagining for you. If I just take a photo of like, I've just done this speaking thing, she like actually sees that it's legit, it's real. It's just like not me on a computer at my desk 24/7. I think, yeah, it's a great moment, and I love every time that I get to share that with her.
On the subject of showing things, where does content sort of fit into your story? I know you mentioned it's to sort of share that journey that you had to go through in that period where you had that upwards pressure, but then on top of that, like, where else does the content side of it fit in?
I think content is something that I think is incredibly important, and it is a part that I have yet to like fully invest and get much more into. So this whole story and stuff is something that I'm sharing more about now, and something I did in my TEDx talk, but it's actually not present in my content at all. But I do have to say that, like, for the investment that I have done so far into creating content, it has like completely changed my life. Like, that opportunity to work with Ali Abdaal, who I think you're familiar with, and hopefully, the audience as well. And then also working with other creators, other big brands, etc. Like, I believe that personal brand is an incredibly important asset to be building, and especially in business now as well. If I feel in a lot of industries, if you don't have personal brands, or let's say again influencers, content creators supporting with that sort of strategy, other people are going to be doing that, and they have a huge advantage in that area, especially because of just the leverage of social media. You make content, we make this sort of podcast, and this can go out to thousands, if not millions of people, right? And you can't do that in a in-person setting when you're networking with other people. But now the content can kind of do the networking for you. So content is just like, I'm just trying to invest as much as possible into it, and figuring it out myself. But I get the opportunity to see other people in the game doing it, and it's crazy what they're thinking about.
It's the whole idea of, I mean, I tell my clients this as well, but like, personal branding in itself is simply just building relationships at scale with people. It's the whole idea of, in your networking in person, it's one-to-one, but with personal branding, it's one-to-many. And it's also, infinite because you can post that piece of content and it's evergreen. It's something that somebody can watch over and over and over again and start building trust without even you having to properly interact with them. So in terms of like where that actually fits in, it's like being able to share a story to this many people. It's not normal for us in terms of like how we should be operating as a society. So having that point there, just honestly sharing your story is everything by that regard. And yeah, it's like the opportunities that you can get from that as well. Absolutely insane. I've worked with Ali as well.
Yeah.
Purely from personal brand. Like he reached out to me.
Oh,
did he
cool,
reach out to you or?
I was part of his like first cohort, so I sent the cold DM to him.
Send the cold DM. Love it. Yeah, and then there's like a few other pretty high profile clients. So I won't bring on yet, but like, yeah, there's that as well. So super exciting opportunity. Honestly, like that's really where it is.
I also think that like if you have a message that you feel is important to share, maybe a worldview that you think is like underappreciated, like content is the way to kind of like break through and share that. And I don't think we've had an opportunity like that before, social media essentially, because who might be a nobody can actually, if they have an important enough message that resonates with people, that's what, again, the algorithm does favor, in terms of shareability and such. So it's like, personal brand is an asset, not only to the person who is doing it, but to do good with that as well. And so that is the big reason for why iCanStudy uses personal brand as well to kind of talk about the power of like how to learn and what that can do for someone in terms of basically just unlocking their potential in that sort of term.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure Justin's personal brand in itself brings so much traffic to iCanStudy where it's like you don't even need to go through paid traffic or UGC or anything like that.
We're not even touching it.
Just purely organic. That's insane. Love it. I like to tell my own clients that your outputs are pretty heavily reliant on the inputs that you put in. So what are some of those inputs that you'd say are non-negotiables to maintain longevity while you're in the process of building?
The first is, of course, I would say work. So, there's always these things about like working smarter, not harder sort of thing. But honestly, like if you are smart, you're going to work smart and hard. You have to put both of those together. So I think that one doesn't really need much explanation, but putting in the effort, because you're giving yourself basically more chances to learn and improve in whatever you're trying to do. And that might be the pursuit of trying to figure out how to do this thing for long term in a sustainable way. At the same time, I would say that the second most important thing is always about learning. And that's why, again, I think there is this whole thing that I'm always thinking about, which is the more that you can increase your ability to learn how to learn, then everything else that you need to figure out becomes quicker. It becomes like an accelerator. So I think like in most cases for myself and what I see, the reason why we're not able to achieve what we want to achieve, whatever goal it might be, is because we don't know how to do it. And so that might come down from the fact that you have an expertise gap, which is that you don't have the knowledge and conceptual understanding of how something works and how to do it yourself. But then there's also, you lack the experience, which is you haven't done that thing enough multiple times to have the pattern recognition to do it again and again and again. So for almost everything that I'm optimizing in my life is trying to do that learning cycle as many times as possible. Learn something, experiment, reflect on it, to have another experiment, and do that again. So we talk about this as kind of like kolbs exponential cycle, if you're familiar. So I am always trying to invest into that as much as possible. And the harder that I can work and be more productive to do that cycle, the better.
For sure. I mean, like the kolb cycle, for those who don't know, it's the process of going from you're learning first, and then you're executing, then you're iterating, and it goes over in a cycle. And yeah, it just goes to show that to create longevity while you're building, it's that metacognition phase where you're trying to make sure that you yourself as a unit can operate at 2x, 3x speeds.
So that's like, the high level principle to it, which is that you want to invest into this cycle. But of course, you can start looking at what are all the strategies that help you with each part of that. I think the big part, and this is reflections for me as well, especially with how I'm trying to figure out how to get the content game to work with me, because again, I'm involved with other people's content, but like when it comes to yourself, it's always kind of a little bit different. So as you mentioned, the metacognition. So that just means like thinking about how you currently think. Right? So you're trying to figure out, okay, when do you have certain cognitive biases to how you approach certain things? Maybe you're just doing things in the way that you're comfortable with and familiar with. And that might have worked in a project that you were doing at university, but that might not apply to how to win in doing content. So a big part to like breaking like metacognition is talking to other people who are experts and learning their different perspectives. So in a similar way, like I'm always trying to meet new people and garner those different perspectives, because that's not something you're going to be able to access yourself just by reading stuff online, right? There's the lived experience, which again is something that AI can just not replace just yet.
I like how you say the lived experience and the unlived experience. It's like you have people who advise on others in terms of like personal branding. You usually see this with like your bigger influencers who sort of don't really know what their offer is, but they'll give advice, and the only problem is they're talking through a singular lived experience. And there are also times where you see these people who haven't actually built their own brands yet, and then they're speaking from unlived experience. That's probably the more common one, hey? Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's always that point of pull where you're trying to figure out, okay, well, like, can I actively repeat this for others? And the only way you can actively repeat it for others is if you expose yourself to that. So anything that you're really building, it's like, I think especially when I work with people in the cohort 6 sense, usually the first thing I ask them is, have you actively spoken to your audience? Have you actively spoken to them and be like, okay, what do you really want? Because you can study content all you want, and I can tell you all the brand engineering and stuff that all you want, but if you aren't serving your audience in the way that they want to be served, there is no point in doing anything else other than just like trying to understand exactly where they are.
It's exactly the same thing in startup world as well. And if you really think about it, it's like no difference to just, I guess, the game of life, which is you're trying to understand like people and, you know, human psychology. Yes, you can put all these little frameworks and stuff that kind of try and reduce the uncertainty because they're applying principles of like human psychology and stuff. But like, as you said, if you're trying to make your content game work, you need to figure out it's specific to you, which means it has to be specific to your audience, which means you need to apply all this sort of knowledge that you've learned about the content game to your audience.
I mean, you would say, and I would say as well, that you're a pretty productive, busy person. Right? I think I see your stories basically every other day where it's like, I got this really long list of things that I just did today. It was like 9-10 hours of deep work, and it was like awesome. How do you integrate content into that? Because with content, the general direction that people like to think when they first get started is they have to allocate time to it. Rather than making that piece of content actually work around them, they're working for their content. So how do you make sure that you're not doing the latter and you're now doing the former of actually making content work around you?
Yeah. So I'm not the expert in this field, but I do speak with the experts who are working with channels that are like 10 plus million followers and stuff who constantly talk about this. And also being in business, like that balance between doing the content and actually working in the business pops up all of the time. From what I have heard and what I think about as well is like, of course, I'm trying to document as much as possible so that I'm not having to spend that dedicated time towards creating like my own content, just like maybe let's say scripted videos and such. I try and do more of the vlogs and whatnot that just document kind of like this going on. But the unfortunate reality is that the content that is like curated and properly crafted is the stuff that does way better. So I will try and as a business-minded person, think about what are all the systems that I can set up, having team members to help out as well with streamlining as much of the content so that every single minute that I spend on creating content has more leverage to it. So 1 minute that I spend is going to lead to more pieces of content and higher quality pieces of content. So I often bring on like content strategists and help train them so that they can help me with my content. They learn the skills, and then also at the same time, we're producing much more higher quality content. And then at the same time, I think about, well, when I'm going to curate and create a particular talking head video or whatever, how can we make sure that that's going to be have the highest chance of succeeding? So those two pieces are always what I'm thinking about.
It's always like the 3 stages of experiments where you're just slowly trying to like get to the point where you've made a full SOP. And even with my own content as well, like you can probably see that there's a strong SOP. Like I have an A-roll static setup where it's just purely my foundational baseline, and then you can just throw whatever B-roll there it is on top of that. So it's not really just like intentional in terms of, oh yeah, like I put this shot here and I'm going to act my way through this story. It's like I'm documenting the story as it goes, and then I talk through it like a narrator. And it's that type of system that actually gets you through to producing a higher quality and higher caliber of content with less time, making sure that you can actually work on, well, like you said, to work on the business versus working on the content. But yeah, actually work on the business and like the high leverage activities. Usually content is a high leverage activity, but we'll get into that in a sec.
Yeah.
I mean, a very early part of your career, if we can say, because you're still so young, man. Like, we're both still pretty young, but a big part of your career, at least in the starting point, was learning coaching, right? Because you went through that phase of learning how to learn and then being able to deliver that to others as well. You're pretty much like what? I would say more productive than 99% of the population. So I want to ask you then, how can you tap in terms of like the building blocks you need to then unlock productivity for longer periods of time?
I think the biggest thing is the 80-20 of productivity. So, I mean, it's 80-20 on everything, right? So I'm always, again, trying to focus on those two same things that we talked about with content, which is I want to put in the work, okay? And then put in the work so that I can do the learning cycle. Same thing applies to like how to learn how to be productive. But if I were to bring it down to a few key skills that if you were to master these, this would be the thing that accelerates your progress in whatever goal you want the most. It would be definitely down to your time management and your task management. Okay. So everyone looks at time management and knows about what that is. So it's looking at with the 24 hours that you have in a day, how do you split that up? Now, you might split that up to be part for sleep, part for eating, part for like catching up with people, social activities, and then the work activities. But really the thing that matters more than time management is the task management. So we're talking about prioritization. When we say prioritization, we're looking at how do you evaluate which of these tasks are the most important to do? And then you have to ask yourself, are these tasks even the right tasks to be doing? And that is very difficult because now you're, especially if you were in school, like things were structured for you. You just got this exam to do. You just need to go through this to-do list. But as soon as you're out of that sort of environment, everything's unstructured. You decide what you want to do. And so you have to now invest in this idea of strategy, decision-making, right? So again, I'm quite business-minded. So I think that all comes back down to, okay, well, how can you learn to be better at developing your decision-making skills and your strategy skills? Obviously, learning more about the area that you're in will help you figure out what is the best way to go. You learn about different strategies and such. But if you get the prioritization right, then the time management and everything else becomes super easy. You'll figure out how to become more productive in of itself. That's why I think it's so important to focus on prioritization. I don't think that's talked about enough at all. And then when you worry about consistency, which is the next thing that like is the like most important thing as well, then that will take care of itself as well. So I think people can invest way more into decision making, science, and learning about that. Right? I talk about learning science and productivity and like high performance and all that sort of thing, but decision making and strategy doesn't get talked about enough. But if you're in business, you'll learn about that. So I think business is good for most people too.
Love it. You pretty much tapped into, what was it, the rapid start module in iCanStudy. So love it. Yeah. Love it. And also, what was it, the to expand a little bit in terms of like actually making sure that you can repeatably and sustain that cycle, and also just making sure that you avoid procrastination and whatnot. It's making sure that baseline is where you work at. You're not working at an ideal state where you're just constantly motivated towards doing that thing. It's turning motivation into habit.
Can I touch on the procrastination one?
Go for it.
So this is obviously, well, okay. It's one of the biggest questions that I get asked. There is, of course, a short-term solution to it and a long-term solution to it. So when you're looking at the short-term solution, this is what everyone's looking for because we want short-term solutions. So you're looking at things like maybe you set up a really big consequence that if you don't finish this particular task, assignment, essay, whatever, then you'll give $100 to your family or a friend, right? That will get things done, but that is not a great way to live. You'll kind of feel like you're on a hamster on a wheel. So the long-term is digging into the deeper, harder questions about yourself. And, that is ultimately what will create the long-term solution. But a lot of people say that they like really, 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 really want to solve like procrastination. But then I tell them like, okay, well, you can learn those little short-term techniques, but you need to spend the time to actually figure out, well, what it is that you want and why. And is that actually really important to you? Not just that you just want to get into medical school because it's just been something that everyone around you has done or your family wanted, but like truly, why is that something that's important to you? How do you know that? Have you tested that? And how far have you tested that? And I think that sort of discussions is so much more exciting. It's also more anxiety inducing, but that's a great journey to learn about yourself, become more self-aware. I also think it is the one that helps the most with the prioritization and the decision making. You figure out your values, and this kind of becomes like a differential sieve to how you choose to make decisions in your life to lead the life that you want. And I think productivity does get existential, and that can still be a worthwhile time invested. I do think it is a very difficult journey to embark on, and you don't need to solve it immediately. But all I'm saying is that don't forget about that. Like, keep in touch with yourself every now and then and have those discussions with friends and family where you get deep and figure out, is this something that really matters to me? I think the biggest gap that I see is that people, again, are not really questioning why they have the goals that they want. Then they achieve the goal and then they realize, I don't really actually care about this.
It's really looking at the underlying onto the reasons why you're procrastinating in the first place. I know we sort of went away from procrastination by that point, but then, understanding where your internal really is. So in that vein, what are some questions that we can ask ourselves when we're going through that process of trying to find the underlying?
That is a very, very difficult question. I think, because I've thought about this a lot as well, and I've worked with mentors who have coached me, and this has changed. But I think the best place for me has been looking at, well, what do I think my values are? So, if you talk to me, I think one of them is like empathy, compassion, like hardworking, resilience, etc. Then when you start with that, then the next question is, how do you know that? So what experiences can you point to that have demonstrated that? It almost feels like you're interviewing yourself, but bear with me. So for me, I know a lot of my experiences come from the episodes with my dad's health. Right, that challenged me. And then you look at, well, where are the experiences then that have challenged that and still that value has held true? Because that is the ultimate test. Does it hold up when it is tested? And I think once you go through that process, which when I have done it properly, it has taken me 2 full days. And I do a yearly kind of recalibrate session where I check in with myself and my best friends. We all just say like, okay, are these values still what we believe in? And then we'll hold each other accountable if we're not. It's a long process, but again, it becomes this filter to everything that you choose to do in your life when there's so many things that you could be doing. So I think that in and of itself is a few questions. Just explore it, and wherever that takes you will be a great step forward.
Taking that systematic approach almost towards actually identifying like where your head is really at. And honestly, I feel like a lot of people don't spend enough time doing that as well. Like you mentioned, it takes you 2 days to reflect on it and really recalibrate. That's something
2 full days.
Like 2 full days. Like empty your calendar full days, right? Like I feel like there's just not enough time for people to like go ahead and do that, or like they just don't allocate that time. I mean, especially even coming into this year, that's something that I recently done as well. And quite frankly, I've achieved more in January than I have in the whole of 2025, which is like so incredibly insane. That's why when you asked me how I was, when I picked you up at the airport, it was like, dude, I have so much to catch you up on, even though it hasn't even technically been that long since we last spoke. So that's, for sure.
Yeah, so that should be a testament, to everyone that, again, that is such a high leverage activity. If you're looking at prioritization, that can be one of the best things to do. Now, of course, you have existing commitments that you need to uphold and keep to, but when you can, try and focus on that area. It's often forgotten.
It's prioritizing yourself in itself. Yeah, for sure. With that in mind then, we've spoken a lot about lifestyle design and then some of the content side of things as well. And honestly, some of the business owner stuff as well. There's so many different avenues, and also actually figuring out what your vocation is, what you love to do, your ikigai, if you want to call it that, right? If you were to tell the brand builder today, listening to our conversation, one thing that they can action in the next 24 hours to start moving the needle in terms of them achieving their goals, what would you tell them?
It's kind of meta, but I would say to actually learn about branding itself. So, if we were talking about the procrastination stuff and how there's the existential long-term solution side to it, and then there's the short-term solution side to it. I think when everyone's trying to think about developing a personal brand, they just go straight to the content strategy because that's the fun stuff. That's visual and it's a little bit easier to understand. But there is a narrative underneath it that is guiding all the way through. And especially now when there's so many content creators, for you to stand out, you do need to have some form of a personal brand that comes through that content. Now, I've seen a lot of friends who are making pretty good quality storytelling content on Instagram, let's say, or YouTube. Maybe they're making advice that is actually really solid advice, but why should I listen to you, right? The person who's on the other side of the social media platform cannot understand that quickly enough. They can't see the authority or credibility that lies behind that. There isn't a piercing brand that comes through. And so I think that is my understanding for why I think a lot of pieces of content online that people are investing into and building a lot of is not performing. Whereas if you are to spend the time to learn about how to build certain associations with yourself through what you say in these pieces of content, then that can hold through. And if I look at the case studies where people have done this extremely well, again, Alex Hormozy is an outlier by far, but he just knew that that's the area to focus on. And then he just doubled down on that like crazy, right? People know that he's got the proof in the pudding. So he started off with webcam videos, right? And that just, spoke through. So I think people need to look at their lives and assess what impressive and cool things that they have done and what makes them worth listening to, and then be able to share that sort of story. Everyone has impressive things to do, but I also think at the same time, you should think about, well, how can you build yourself up to be more of an impressive person anyway, so that it just makes it a no-brainer for why people should listen to you. You don't want to put something on and kind of pretend to be someone you're not as well.
Yeah. It's looking into actually building a personal brand rather than just a content engine. And I say it a lot, but actually learning how to engineer brand foundations is arguably the most important aspect of actually building that, personal brand online. Because otherwise, you'll be shouting into the void, you'll be shouting to the wrong people. And honestly, when it comes to branding and stuff like that and content, it's not really about the content you make, it's about who's actually making that content. And it's really understanding that you're basically character building more than you are at the editing table in front of a camera, scripting a video. So it's really looking into that underlying, and 100% agree with that. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Archer.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, really appreciate you coming through. I know this is a really short 24 hours that you're here.
Yes.
We're both here for an event, but there you go.
Yeah, it's been fun. And it's always great when we get to catch up anyway.
But yeah, that's a wrap. Let's do it.